refers largely to WCA and PIP, but that does make reference to the disarray of other benefit programmes. I want to concentrate on the Independent Living Fund, which the government is proceeding to abolish. A group of people with severe disabilities on Saturday turned up with their carers and in their wheelchairs, and they chained themselves together in Westminster Abbey Gardens in protest against the government's proposal to proceed with the abolition of the Independent Living Fund. It was organised by a group called DPAC, Disabled People Against the Cuts. I have to say they tried to remain there for a couple of weeks to try and engage with parliamentarians and others in this particular issue, but unfortunately 200 police arrived and evicted them from the site with the support of the Dean of Westminster. I wonder what happened to the Sermon of the Mount. But nevertheless, the whole issue around the Independent Living Fund is I thought there was cross-party support, that this was one of the benefits that actually did work. The idea of being able to fund carers and others who enabled people with severe disabilities to ensure that they were no longer trapped within residential homes but could live independently in their own homes and participate in wider society, and some of them, as a result of that support, go to work and earn their income as well. I thought we had cross-party agreement on that as that one part of the welfare system that was working effectively. But the government has proceeded to abolish it. And what is happening now, though funds to the responsibility is now being transferred to local authorities, and the government is arguing that the Care Act will enable local authorities to provide this similar level of service. Well, that's not the case as far as many of the people who are experiencing the services by local authorities already are concerned. There's been a £3 billion cut in the amount of expenditure by local authorities on social care for people with disabilities. We've already seen that there are significant cutbacks on levels of care. So these people who are severely disabled are anxious now that the money transferred to local authorities, with not being ring-fenced, means that local authorities are cutting the levels of support for people with disabilities, and it will not be protected in the future. And it is causing absolute concern and desperation among people with disabilities and with their carers. So much so that they took the government to court because of the lack of consultation and the consideration of the equalities implications of the government's proposals. And they won in court. But the government, only a few months ago, decided nevertheless to proceed with the abolition of the Independent Living Fund. I believe that's going to be challenged again by a number of the claimants. I'm hoping this time round the government will not contest that challenge to that policy, and we can come back to seek a discussion and arrive at consensus again about how we can support the most severely disabled people in our country. And what it needs is exactly as the ILF was funded for, to provide care and support so that that disability can be at least overcome in the sense of being able to participate in wider society. This is causing extreme consternation, not just amongst disabled people themselves, but also amongst their families as well, because we know what will happen. The local authority cutbacks will fall onto the individuals concerned, but that care will then fall onto the families themselves. Many of them ageing parents, I have to say, in my constituency. And we know what eventually will happen is those people who are unable, because of the cutback in the abolition of the ILF, the Independent Living Fund, will eventually be forced back into residential establishments again. At the end of the day, that will prove even more costly for the 17,500 people that are currently receiving this benefit. So I appeal to this House and I appeal to the government to think again on this one, because this is one benefit which we all thought we'd got right. I served on the committee in the 1980s, on the Committee Against Restriction on Disabled People, the first one that tried to ensure integration of disabled people in this country, and we thought this was the benefit that could succeed, and everyone agreed at that time and should agree now.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.